You think you have loyal allies in your life. You don't find out until the room actually catches fire. That's the part nobody tells you. Most of your circle isn't standing beside you when the smoke fills the hallway. They're already calculating an exit route while you're still fumbling for the door handle, still assuming somebody's got your back. People confuse proximity with alignment constantly. They mistake someone who needs them right now for someone who will still be standing there when there's nothing left to gain from the relationship. If you actually want to see how human beings operate under maximum threat, not the polite version, the real one, look at the concrete walls of Fox River State Penitentiary. On one side, Fernando Sucre, a man who sacrifices his freedom, his comfort, his entire future for the simple, almost old-fashioned reason that he gave his word. On the other side, Theodore Bagwell, T-Bag, a predatory survivor who treats every single human interaction like a hostage negotiation, whether he's talking to a cellmate or ordering lunch. One of them builds a shield of trust that nothing can crack. The other stays trapped in a hell of his own paranoia forever. Why? That question is what today's actually about. Not the prison, not the escape. The question underneath all of it. How do you tell the difference between someone who's loyal to you and someone who's only loyal to whatever advantage you happen to be providing at the moment? Watch Sucre sitting in solitaire, staring into pitch dark, taking the fall for a hole in the floor he never dug, refusing to hand over a single name even though it costs him his last shot at seeing Maricra. Now cut straight to T-Bag swallowing, handcuffing himself to Schofield, threatening to torch the entire operation if he isn't dragged along for the ride. One man builds a fortress out of silent reliability. The other builds a bomb and calls it leverage. When Michael Schofield needs a cellmate who won't crack under pressure, he ends up with Fernando Sucre, a guy who initially wants absolutely nothing to do with any of this, because he's months from parole and finally has a shot at a normal life. But the second he gives his word, something locks into place. It doesn't move again. Compare that to how T-Bag gets his seat at the table. He doesn't earn it. He finds the hole behind Schofield's toilet and turns it into blackmail on the spot. He forces his way in by taking the entire crew hostage. If he goes down, everybody goes down with him. And here is where the entire illusion breaks down. Because look closely at what's actually holding each man in place. Sucre runs on an internal value system where a promise functions like a load-bearing wall. Cover the hole, dig through concrete, stand lookout for 6 hours in the freezing dark. He absorbs personal risk to protect something bigger than himself, and that loyalty becomes an asset. It reduces friction for everyone around him. T-Bag runs on something else entirely. Pure transaction, pure leverage. He knows, somewhere underneath the bravado, that he's fundamentally untrustworthy. So he has to keep manufacturing new forms of collateral just to stay relevant. Swallow a key, hide the coordinates. Handcuff yourself to the one guy who can't afford to lose. This is the actual line between a partner and a parasite. A partner creates value that makes them worth keeping around. A parasite creates leverage that makes them impossible to remove without everything falling apart. You've met this person, by the way. Maybe you work with them right now. The colleague who never actually contributes anything you can point to, no real output, no real risk taken, but somehow always knows exactly which meeting to be in, which piece of information to sit on, which favor to cash in at exactly the moment it hurts you most. They don't add value, they hoard leverage, and the second your team stops needing whatever they're holding hostage, they become disposable overnight. They just don't know it yet. If your position on a team, in a company, inside a friendship, depends entirely on withholding something or holding somebody hostage to stay relevant, you're not playing Sucre's game, you're playing T-Bag's. And T-Bag's game always ends the same way. Somebody eventually severs the hand that's tying you to them. Now watch what happens when the walls actually start closing in for real. Captain Bellick catches Sucre out of his cell during a lockdown, and it snowballs fast. Contraband gets discovered. The interrogation starts, and Sucre ends up thrown into the shoe. Solitary confinement, total darkness. He's offered the easiest deal in the world. Give up the name of whoever planned the operation, or rot down there and lose his visitation rights. Lose Maricra. Sit with that for a second, because most people skim right past it. He's not choosing between comfort and discomfort. He's choosing between the last human connection he has left in the world and a code he decided to live by. Alone, in the dark, with absolutely nobody watching to give him credit for it. No cameras, no audience. Just him and a decision nobody would blame him for breaking. He says nothing. Most people would have broken right there. Not because they're weak, because loyalty with a real cost attached is rare, and most people have never actually been tested at that price point before. Sucre demonstrates something most of us only talk about in theory, what structural integrity looks like under real, physical, soul-crushing load. Silence in that cell isn't just a tactical choice. It's the entire currency of trust, paid in full with interest. Contrast that with T-Bag under the same kind of pressure. He never absorbs anything quietly, ever. The instant he feels he redistributes it, noise, chaos, a scapegoat thrown to the wolves before anyone can pin it on him. Short term, that buys him breathing room. Long term, it guarantees something much worse. Total isolation. Nobody defends a man who spent his whole life making sure nobody owes him anything. That isn't strategy. That's a ticking clock. Think about your own team for a second. The person who takes the hit quietly when a project goes sideways, who never throws a teammate under the bus even when it would be moved, who says, "I'll handle it," and actually means it. That person is building Sucre's kind of equity, dollar by dollar, in a currency most workplaces have forgotten exists. And the person who deflects blame the second things go wrong, who's suddenly nowhere to be found when the post-mortem starts, who's already drafting the email that quietly implicates someone else. You already know exactly how that story ends for them eventually. It just takes longer than anyone expects. Push further into the run across Utah, hunting for Westmoreland's buried $5 million, and the dynamic between the whole crew reaches a boiling point. Sucre keeps putting himself in danger to secure the money for everyone, not just himself, everyone, while T-Bag spends every waking second hunting for a crack in his companion's armor. Eventually, he finds his opening, doubles-crosses the entire crew, steals the cash in a modified backpack, and leaves the rest of them to take the fall. And if you've ever dealt with a narcissist or a toxic coworker, you already know exactly what happens next, because the betrayal was never actually a surprise. It was predictable the entire time to anyone reading the psychological terrain correctly. Let's be plain about something. T-Bag's pattern is predatory, dishonest, and fundamentally destructive from the ground up. Nobody's studying him to copy him. You study him to recognize the warning signs the next time they show up wearing a different face. A startup co-founder who quietly rewrites the equity split the second funding land. A friend who only calls when they need something. A colleague who smiles in the stand-up and leaks your numbers to leadership the moment layoff rumors start circulating. T-Bag sees human beings as instruments. Use them, drain them, discard them. Vulnerability to him was never an invitation for empathy. It was just a vector for exploitation. Show weakness around a purely transactional person and they don't offer help. They calculate. Sucre sees relationships through mutual obligation and shared sacrifice. He builds relational equity, deposit after deposit, mostly when nobody's watching. And when he's finally stranded, broke, hunted by federal agents with nowhere left to turn, people risk their own lives for him because his track record is spotless. When T-Bag gets hunted, his temporary allies aren't looking for a way to save him. They're looking for the nearest ditch. Short-term predatory plays feel like winning. They're actually just borrowing against a future that eventually comes due, with interest nobody wants to pay. Now drop both men into Sona, the lawless Panamanian prison where none of the old rules apply anymore. Sucre's on the outside with nothing. No money, no authority, no leverage of any kind. Instead of panicking, instead of turning predator the way circumstances practically beg him to, he takes the lowest job available, gravedigger. And from that position, quietly, invisibly, he becomes the single most critical link keeping Michael alive on the inside. Inside those walls, T-Bag responds to the exact same scarcity by doing what he always does, stirring up riots, manipulating Lechero, manufacturing chaos loud enough to disguise the fact that he has no real power left at all. He didn't break, not once, That line belongs to Sucre, not T-Bag, and the difference matters. Amateurs panic under scarcity and start tearing down whatever's left of their own infrastructure just to buy a moment of comfort. T-Bag can't survive an operational drought without setting something on fire to compensate. Sucre goes the opposite direction entirely. Humility, discipline, silent labor. A shovel, the heat, the disrespect of being treated like nothing. He stays invisible on purpose, because he's not interested in looking powerful. He's interested in being effective. If you need constant validation, dominance, visibility, just to feel like your work matters, you will break the exact moment someone strips that visibility away from you. Watch how many people in your own life or workplace fold completely the second the spotlight moves somewhere else. Here's where both roads finally end. Sucre walks away with his family intact, his name clear, backed by men who would genuinely die for Michael, Lincoln, the whole crew. T-Bag ends up exactly where he started, a dark cell in Fox River, completely alone, surrounded only by people who despise him, deprived of a single real human connection, still running the same pathetic coercion tactics that got him locked up in the first place. Both men started from roughly the same condition. Their values sent them to opposite ends of the earth. T-Bag believed he was the ultimate realist, the guy who finally understood that the world is dog-eat-dog and loyalty is for sucker. He thought his cynicism made him sharper than everyone in the room. It didn't. Cynicism is just cowardice wearing a nicer jacket. By refusing to ever trust another human being, he guaranteed that no human being would ever trust him back. He won 100 small tactical fights and lost the only war that actually counted. Sucre, the guy cynics would call naive for taking hits meant for other people, was actually playing the highest level game available. He invested in character and nobody was checking the receipts. He proved himself reliable in the worst conditions imaginable, and that reliability built an alliance network strong enough to pull him straight out of hell needed it most. A man who only plays for himself eventually finds himself completely alone. A man who stands by his people builds something no prison on this earth can hold. So here's your actual reality check, and I mean this one directly. Don't copy the criminal lifestyle. Don't run from the law. And don't, under any circumstances, adopt T-Bag's predatory manipulation as a life philosophy. What matters here is reading the room correctly and choosing your character on purpose. Before pressure forces the decision, play like T-Bag, leverage, withheld information, treating people as disposable tools, panicking the second things get hard, and you might grab a quick win today. Tomorrow you're isolated, and you won't see it coming until it's already happened. Play like Sucre, keep your word even when it costs you. Absorb pressure without turning it into someone else's problem. Execute quietly, stand by the people who have actually earned it, and you become nearly impossible to remove from any room you walk into. Audit your circle. Actually do it this week. Find the people who only call when they need leverage and start creating distance. Then ask yourself the only question that actually matters when the pressure gets turned up on your own team. Are you the one absorbing the blow? Or are you the one quietly looking for a key to swallow? Stop chasing shortcuts to influence. Stop leaning on cheap leverage, manipulation, or loyalty with strings attached just to get ahead a little faster. Real power was never about taking hostage. Real power is being the person everyone in the room trusts the second the building actually starts burning down. Build your reputation on silent execution. Unbreakable integrity, reliability so consistent it stops being remarkable and just becomes who you are. Decide today. A cage built from your own paranoia, or a network strong enough to hold you up when everything else gives way. Choose character over leverage. Choose discipline over panic. Become the ally no system on earth can break. Leverage buys you temporary compliance. Loyalty buys you an indestructible fortress. A predator wins small tactical battles, only to guarantee their own total isolation. Silence under pressure is the highest currency of human character. T-Bag played for immediate leverage and ended up in a cell. Sucre played for ironclad trust and walked away free.